fear with these negotiations, or I will simply terminate NAFTA entirely, and we will be far better off. With that, we bring in a member of the Donald Trump for President Advisory Board and author of Mad Politics, Dr. Gina Loudon. Nice to see you as always, ma'am. Thank you.
Great to be with you.
Really, we would all be better off if we canceled all of our bilateral trade agreements and trilateral trade agreements with Canada?
Well, I think the president's interest is the same as the American people, Leland. You know, we lost thousands of businesses, don't forget, through NAFTA. We lost millions of jobs. So the Americans out there who lost their jobs because they were sent overseas are much more concerned.
Ma'am, okay, well, they were sent to Mexico or they were sent to Canada. But either way, in this idea, there's also tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of American jobs that rely on having NAFTA in place to trade with Canada. Those people lose their jobs just the same if you cancel NAFTA.
The president's going to make sure, just as he always has, this president ran on the subject of jobs, and he has not forgotten that for one second. And I think even the stock market reflects America's confidence right now in this president's ability to lead on economics and job issues. He's not going to let those people down. I don't think that's a concern of most Americans, and I don't even think it's a concern of many businesses. He wants to bring those jobs back to the United States.
I've interviewed a lot of businesses that have been hurt by President Trump's tariffs. I've interviewed a lot of people who say that President Trump's tariffs are going to put them out of a job. Just go down to Missouri and a nail company that now it costs them more to buy steel from overseas than it does for a contractor to buy imported nails from China. There's winners and losers in any trade war. There's no such thing as a no-lose situation here.
Well, growth always requires a little bit of pain. So there's going to be some short-term pain for some long-term gain. And I think that's how the president has used this whole negotiating tactic. Now, let's remember, this is the master negotiator. This president has negotiated
ma'am, I only got about 30 seconds. Let me just try to understand something. Should we read these tweets where he's saying, I'm willing to cancel this or I'm willing to do that? Is this a tactic? Is this sort of staking out another one of the president's extreme positions only to sort of come back to the middle to make a deal?
The president's been clear that he wants to negotiate with everyone, and he doesn't just look for America's success. He looks for the whole world to be successful, but he looks to be the leader of America and for America to have absolutely fabulous success. That's what he's always said, and that's what he's fighting for. And I believe that. I think most Americans do, too.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Jillian.
President Trump slamming the accuracy of a new ABC Washington Post poll Friday. It found nearly two-thirds of Americans back Mueller's Russia investigation and believe the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, should keep his job. For more insight on what these results mean and what's next to come in that Russia probe, let's bring in former prosecutor and criminal defense attorney Robert Bianchi. Robert, thanks for being here. The latest, Don McGahn, the White House counsel, out. Some GOP lawmakers are worried that now President Trump's Office of White House Counsel is getting too thinned out. They're worried this leaves him vulnerable after the midterms if the Democrats retake the House. What do you say? Is it okay to have, I think it's one more deputy counsel now left over at the White House?
You know, Julian, I led a prosecutorial agency for 6 years, and one of the hallmarks, and I believe the right one, is to try to get the most talented people, even if they disagree with your opinion, in order to have institutional knowledge and to give you proper advice. So with the removal of McGahn, you are weakening the ability to be able to give the proper advice that ultimately the president is going to accept or not accept. So you want to get more talent. You want him to get more voices in the room. He is in a bare bones scenario, and he is going to be in for a fight for his life because these storm clouds are looming all over the place with respect to this investigation, and a sobering and steady voice is going to be very, very important.
So, Robert, it sounds like you're saying it's not just the numbers, how many lawyers are around the president. It's what their point of views are, what their perspective on the law at hand is. He wants a range of advice. He doesn't want a bunch of yes men. Is that right?
Well, listen, I do criminal defense too, but I'm more of a prosecutorial-minded person. And when I was in the room as a prosecutor, I ultimately made the call. But I wanted to hear from people that I trusted, that I respected. And many times we had vociferous arguments and disagreements with the manner in which an investigation or a prosecution should take place. Ultimately, they all knew when they stepped out of the room, when I made a decision, it was final. But I took their advice and counsel very seriously. Sometimes people want yes men. men. They want confirmation bias. They want people to agree with what their personal viewpoint is, and that can be very dangerous. For example, it would be wise for the president, and just out of all due respect, to stop continuing to tweet the things he is, because it's building a more and more nefarious scenario for him, potential obstruction issues all over the place. And I'm sure his lawyers are telling him to keep quiet. Hey, that's his decision after he gets competent advice, but you don't want those lawyers who disagree with that approach just to be removed because they don't agree with how you decide to go about things.
Sure. I think the American people probably want the president to get what he needs, not necessarily what he wants at any given moment in time. Not just President Trump, any American president. Here's the president on Thursday at a rally. He starts talking about the threats to get involved if things don't go the way he wants them to go. Take a listen. I want to get your reaction.
People are angry. What's happening is a disgrace. And at some point, I wanted to stay out, but at some point, if it doesn't straighten out properly, I want them to do their job. I will get involved, and I'll get in there if I have to.
So should he stay out of the fray, or do you think he should jump in?
Absolutely should stay out of the fray. You know, something, Julian, that I find odd is when I was appointed by the governor with the advice and consent of the Senate, I was black boxed at that point in time. In other words, I had a term that could not remove me from office for anything short of impeachment or cause. With the system we have right now, the attorney generals are under the backbone of a president, and if a president himself is being investigated and doesn't like it, he can attempt to try to remove him. I did a little quick list, Julian, for your audience, because I think it's important. Remember that during the campaign, we had the Trump speech encouraging Russians to hack the emails. We had the constant adulation of Putin. We had the RNC Ukraine platform as the only thing changed. We have Papadopoulos, we now know. Australian officials are telling us, hey, he's trying to reach out with respect to compromising information on Clinton. We had the Trump Tower meeting. Then after the election, what do we have? We have the Comey firing, the Lester Holt interview, the White House meeting with Kislyak where he said he was fired because of the Russian investigation, attacks on Sessions, attacks on Rosenstein, attacks on Mueller, attacks on Wray, many of whom he appointed, pressuring Congress, calling for a Hillary Clinton investigation.
Robert, I want to stop you right there. I'm sorry. We've got a hard wrap coming up in a second. It sounds like you're saying the president has already put a toe in the water, so it's not so much anymore left to, if he's going to get involved, as whether he's going to actually insert himself into the process. Robert Bianchi, thanks so much for joining us.
All right.
Be sure to tune in tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern for Media Buzz. Howard Kurtz will have an exclusive interview with Michael Cohen's attorney, Lanny Davis.
Watch that tomorrow. We'll be back 1 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. After the break, remembering U.S. Senator John McCain. Peter Doocy outside the National.
For a long ceremony here at the National Cathedral, the late Senator John McCain was respectfully remembered as somebody whose experience as a lawmaker and a prisoner of war and a father created a worldview that led him to only ever do what he wanted to do. And so, colleagues and rivals alike lined up to salute him one last time, even though many of them made clear that they didn't always agree with him.
He was honest, no matter whom it offended. Presidents were not spared.
The 44th President Barack Obama revealed here that he and the late Senator McCain, who he beat in the 2008 election, regularly huddled in the Oval Office for meetings about their personal lives and about policies of the day. And Obama cemented the respect that he had for the late senator. But he, like many others today, also said that he had an appreciation for the late senator's sense of humor.
A little bit of a mischievous streak. After all, what better way to get a last laugh than to make George and I say nice things about him to a national audience?
There were no direct references to the current president, Donald Trump, who was not invited, but there was an unmistakable allusion to him and his famous campaign slogan during an emotional tribute by the late senator's daughter, Meghan.
America does not boast because she has no need to. The America of John McCain has no need to be made great again because America was always great.
And that line drew something that you really don't expect to hear at a memorial service for someone who just passed away. Applause. Leland?
All right, Peter Doocy, we will certainly be remembering and analyzing those lines for a long time outside National Cathedral. Peter, thank you.
Today, the news reports indicate that Russian military forces crossed an internationally recognized border into the sovereign territory of Georgia. Russia should immediately and unconditionally cease its military operations and withdraw all forces from sovereign Georgian territory.
That was Senator John McCain back